Ja, han, precis.
Visserligen min nästa.
Ja, ledsen. Det var inte min mening. Ska vi börja? Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, students, everybody, it's a really pleasure for me to welcome you here to IVA. You know that it's a special year for IVA this year, so we are the first engineering academy in the world, and this year we will be 100 years. So we have a big celebration of our anniversary and also engineering in society. And this seminar that we are going to start is kind of like a prelude, if you like, for a big international conference that is starting tomorrow, which is going to deal with the engineering of the next 100 years. We say, okay, we know what we've done for the past 100 years, but we need to also start planning for the next, and there's lots of different kinds of challenges ahead of us. This conference, this meeting here today has to do with education, and it has because it is important for IVA. Though we don't select students as our members, we do have a student council, which is more like an advisory body for the rest of us. For the reason that it's the students that are actually going to build the future that we are talking about. And so we are very happy that we have here experts in education in different ways. And I will give to Martin to introduce a little bit more the theme, but I'm very happy to see all of you here. And I think that we are dealing with something that is really important for the future. So Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and very welcome everyone. It's impressive that we've managed to attract you to this seminar given the weather outside. I mean, for those of you who are not Swedish, you should know that it's virtually impossible to make 70 people gather indoors at this time of the year. However, we have succeeded. So my job is that I am in charge of the work we do here in research and education policy at the IVA offices. And I'm very privileged to moderate this seminar today for you. We have excellent speakers. We will listen to great initiatives and discuss a bit about the problems, what the problems are with kids and women and engineering. Meaning, well, that didn't sound quite right. It's not a problem with kids or women. The problem is that there are not enough of them in engineering and science. Oh well, yes, it's time to have a vacation. Anyway, so as I said, you'll be listening to great speakers, but first you have to listen to me for a little while. It's a hard life, but you have to do it. One of the major problems that we have, at least here in Sweden and also in many countries, is that there are not enough women in engineering and also to some extent in science. We have, together with the Swedish Association of Engineers and also the Association of Engineering Industries, done a study in the honor of Vera Sandberg. Now, who on earth is Vera Sandberg? Vera Sandberg is was the first female engineer who took her exam in 1917 from Chalmers Technical University, or what we today know as Chalmers Technical University. And we wanted to look at what does it actually look with regard to gender balances and what can we do about it. We're now doing a tour in the whole country to different universities to discuss these issues at different universities to try to learn from what people think, so we can then downstream also suggest some policy changes possibly, if needed. So this is a picture that I think many of you know because it looks very similar in many other countries. The young kids, year 5 to the left here, in school, so that means that they're around 12 years old. These kids, boys and girls, are both very interested in technology. They think it's interesting. Then it goes downhill from there. And you can see 4 years later in year 9, you can see that the boys' interest in technology has gone down, but not at all as much as the girls. And it's interesting why it is like this. And we are discussing issues such as what signals are we sending to the kids? What is the role model of an engineer? What is a typical engineer? Those are issues that we try to discuss. This sort of bias is then perpetuating through the educational system. These are different programs on high school level. And if you look at the technical program in red up there, you will see that there's an 84% representation of boys in that program, only 16% women. Now that's interesting, because on all the other programs that are directed towards further studies at universities, there is either a dominance of women, or alternatively, the situation is sort of fairly equal. Technology sort of stands out in this respect. If we look at universities, we can see that the 2 major technology programs, we have, for those of you who are not Swedish, we have 2 major programs, one 3-year, one 5-year, so it's basically a Bachelor of Technology and one of a Master, are also dominated by men. Now that's interesting again, because those are the only 2 educations where it looks like that. On all other educations programs, the women either dominate or the situation is equal. And it's interesting that this situation is the same also in it's like that also in programs where there used to be a male domination, such as, for instance, the lawyers or the doctors are now dominated by women, or women are in the majority, I should say, not dominated, that's too strong. Now, of course, the underrepresentation of women on the engineering program is sort of, it's true on the aggregated level, but it's not completely true if you start looking at the details. If you look at biotech, there's actually, women are actually dominating, while in the other end of the spectrum is computer science. Only about 10% of the computer science students in Sweden on the university level are women. And that is a little bit strange to me, why it is like that. So if we then do a comparison of what it looks like in different countries, these are UNESCO data from a couple of years ago, and they've looked at the proportion of women taking exams in science subjects and in tech subjects. And we can see that in science subjects, there's nearly always a majority, women are always have a higher representation in science than they do in technology, with one single exception that we hope we'll learn the answer to why it is like that soon, and that's Denmark. In Denmark, it's the same in both science and technology. It's very similar, so we hope we can learn from what you're doing. We'll see. So anyway, so now, okay, so it's like this. Women are obviously not interested in tech. That's what this data seems to say. So then we presume that women must be really bad in maths. But it's not like that. It's actually the opposite way around. Women have higher grades in all math courses in secondary school and high school compared to the boys. Now the question is, of course, the difference isn't that great, but it's clear. Women have higher grades than men. Also, women perform better throughout the university educations. There are fewer early leavers from educations. You can see here that in red are the percentage of women leaving education programs during the first 2 years, and purple is the equivalent for men. Now, this is not specific for engineering. It's actually so that men jump ship, leave the education much earlier, much more than women on all educational programs at university. And this actually illustrates another problem. Why are the boys not studying as much as they used to do? That is an equally important problem, but it's another problem. So we'll discuss that another day. I'll skip that slide because it just shows that it's a similar situation for graduation frequency. So, okay, trying to stop here on a more optimistic note, we can find that it's still not that gloomy, because if we look at the age structures, both with regard to members in the Swedish Association of Engineers and also in the statistics, we can see that the representation of women in engineering is much higher in the younger age groups compared to the older age groups. And this possibly, or we hope, means that the situation will sort of slowly move towards a new equilibrium. And I especially like my turtle. So how do we reach a situation where there is no specific reason to have a goal that there is 50-50? That's not the reason. The thing we want to strive for is that women, and it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man when you choose your occupation. So you should be able to become an engineer if you want to, whatever gender you have. So we have to work with norms. We have to think about what signal society sends. We have to look at what role models there are, and also look at methods, of course, for learning and technology. And that is something that Eva actually does and will continue to do in the new project we have on schools and educations. But one thing that's also extremely important are the different initiatives that we have in society. There are so many really good initiatives to make more young study science, technology, to make more kids sort of discover the enjoyment of science and technology. And some of those will be highlighted here today. So, now you've had to listen to me for a little while. So now you don't have to do that anymore, at least not for a little while. So now I'd like to introduce Linda Liukas. I'm not sure about the pronunciation of your family name.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Great, fantastic. So you're a programmer, you're a writer, you're an illustrator. You studied also I think, at the Aalto University.
Yes.
So I suspect that's how you two met first time.
Yes.
You started the Rails Girls.
Uh-huh.
And you have written a fantastic book, Hello Ruby, that I guess you will tell us a bit about
more. A little
more.
bit, yes.
And we look forward to your talk.
Wonderful.
100 languages. There it is.
Pull up. And a few back.
You okay?
And visa. Wonderful. My name is Linda Liukas. As mentioned, I come from Helsinki, Finland. I'm a children's book author, illustrator, and programmer who combines storytelling with software, because that is the way I learned computer science. When I was studying computer science, I was really bored with the dull and grey textbooks, and every time I would run into something I didn't understand, like what is object-oriented programming or what is functional programming, I would try to imagine how a 6-year-old little girl would explain the concept. And this is where I started my career from the idea that if coding is the next universal language, instead of teaching people grammar classes, we ought to be teaching more poetry lessons. And what I mean with that is the idea we don't learn a natural language only by conjugating irregular verbs or practicing the grammar rules. We learn a language by speaking it, by singing it, by dancing it, by flirting it. And in this way, we need 100 different ways for us to express programming. And for me, a very natural way to get storytelling, because I think there are a wonderful amount of ways to learn coding, everything from the puzzle-based activities of code.org to the open-ended playground of Scratch. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these approaches. But there was one thing that, in my opinion, was missing from the equation, and that was stories. Because in some ways, stories have always been the way we humans learn about ourselves. We learn about each other, learn about the world around us. And no one was really telling stories about the world of software. So today, that's my full-time job. I write picture books, very old school children's books about computer science, and the book series spans books about coding and computational thinking, about the hardware of the computer, how the internet works, and the latest book is about machine learning and AI, and what should a 6-year-old kid should understand about those things. And the books have been translated into 28 languages, so it tells volumes about how much there is a need around the world for new kinds of ways to teach engineering education. And today I don't think I teach kids coding. What I actually think I do is I prepare them for a world where more and more of the problems around them are computer problems. And one of the worst things I think computer science has done to itself is call itself computer science, because that steers us into a totally different and wrong direction. And let me explain how. Because when we think about a the physical world. And when we think about a biologist, we think about someone who studies the biological world. So it's an easy mistake to make that, oh, a computer scientist is the person who studies the computer. But that's a really dangerous mistake, because a computer scientist is someone who uses the computer to study the big problems of the world, those of energy, education, health, nutrition. And we need a much more diverse group of people to see computers as a problem-solving tool, as a tool of self-expression. And with that, I wanted to offer you kind of my vision for the next 100 years of early childhood engineering education. What would an engineering approach that would have the depth of Montessori education combined with the charm of Moomin look like? And because I'm a children's book author, I wanted to give you the A, B, and C of technology education. And A obviously is for the word algorithm. So many of you don't like the word algorithm. You think of the world of Facebook, you think of the world of finance, but children actually think an algorithm is a wonderful word. It feels big in their mouth, and they know that an algorithm, after all, is just a step-by-step solution to a problem. And we practice doing algorithms without a computer. So we break apart a problem like brushing your teeth into smaller problems. And we learn how frustrating it is to talk to a computer. You need to define every single thing, like what is a toothbrush? And you remember when you get the toothbrush to your mouth, you need to remember the toothpaste. And by the time you've gotten the toothpaste to your mouth, you remember that the toothpaste has a cork. And how on earth are you going to open the cork when the other hand is already occupied? And through activities like this, through breaking apart a big problem into smaller pieces, the kids learn about the concept of an algorithm. But they also learn that programming is not lonely. It's very collaborative. Like actual programmers work in pairs, and you need 2 pairs of eyes to spot problems. Programming is also not something that you do beautifully in your head. You make a lot of mistakes, and this is definitely something the kids get to experience. Actually, programmers make so many mistakes that mistakes has a special word in programming. It's called debugging, when you go into your code and fix what's wrong. And then finally, and most importantly, they learn about creativity. Because there's not only one way to solve the toothbrushing algorithm problem. There's probably 100 different ways of solving this problem. Some of them are more elegant, some of them are more efficient. But I think the creative side of programming, the crafty side of programming, is something we forget oftentimes. And in this way, when we think about it, an algorithm is just like a cupcake recipe. And through the metaphor of a cupcake, we can also approach the other powerful side of algorithms, namely that you can make 1 cupcake with a cupcake recipe, but you can also make 100 cupcakes or 100,000 cupcakes. So once you write the algorithm out, it's a really powerful tool, because a computer can repeat the same sequence of instructions over and over again. But this is not the algorithm most of us think about. And to go a little bit deeper into the idea of an algorithm, I show kids these 5 numbers. And I ask them to put the numbers in order of magnitude, so that the smallest number is on the left-hand side and the biggest is on the right-hand side. And it takes kids roughly 5-6 minutes, depending on the age, to complete this task. And then I ask them to do the same with these numbers, and then the same with these numbers. And the kids say, oh, it takes forever. And I say, lesson number 1, never compete with a computer on a task like this. A computer will always outperform you. It will always make far less mistakes. It will be always much, much faster. But it still needs instructions. And we humans write those instructions. So an example, the way a computer would approach a problem like this is here. It would start from the beginning, it would compare 1 and 56, it would say 56 is bigger than 1, let's keep it like this. It would move to the next pair of numbers, it would compare 56 and 4 and say 4 is smaller than 56, let's swap these around. It would move on to 56 and 70, says 70 is bigger than 56, let's keep it like this. It would compare 70 and 20, swap these around, and then it would go all the way to the beginning and keep going through over and over and over again until the numbers were sorted. This here, ladies and gentlemen, was an algorithm. It's called the bubble sort algorithm. It's one of the working horses of computer science, still a very powerful algorithm, powering many of the services we use every day. And in this way, I'm hoping that I can show a more tactile side of what an algorithm can be. But this still is not enough. I think we still need to take the algorithm away from the theoretical context into the real world. So I show kids a picture of a search engine and I ask, where is the algorithm hiding? And we talk about the order in which you see the search results and the kinds of ads you see. And we decide that someone wrote an algorithm, a step-by-step sequence of instructions to optimize the kinds of ads you see. And then we look at a social networking side. Again, we discuss what kind of algorithms can you see here. And we talk about how it's not a coincidence that you see certain people's updates more on the social networking side, because the algorithm optimizes for the time you spend on the sites. And then finally, we talk about YouTube, and we talk about the predictive text, and we talk about the next up videos, and we talk about the ads. But we also talk about the peculiar, weird videos children are seeing on YouTube. Those mashup videos of surprise Play-Doh, eggs, Peppa Pig, Stamper Car, Minecraft, Smurfs, Kinder thingies that don't really seem like they are done for humans. And that's the thing. They are not done for humans. They are done for algorithms. Because YouTube gets 400 hours of new video content every 1 minute. And there's no way YouTube engineers can go through all of that content, so they need an algorithm. And turns out there's whole Eastern European countries that are churning out content that is not designed for our 6-year-olds. It's designed for the algorithm. And that's why I think it's really, really important that we give kids these theoretical concepts, these practical ideas, and this context of learning of how algorithms are actually shaping and changing our societies. That was A. A for algorithm. B is for Boolean logic. And since we're celebrating the 100 years of EVA here today, I must say that I'm a little bit jealous for those of you who actually were born and grew up with the computers of the 1970s, because you could still touch a transistor. For my generation, we can jam 300 million transistors at the pinpoint of a pen. And computers have become so powerful, but we have no way of explaining how they work anymore. And sometimes I wish I could shrink myself to the size of a silicon chip, but unfortunately that's not possible unless you're a children's book author. So that's exactly what I did with Ruby. One day she goes into Dad's study, she types her password in, but the computer doesn't work. And all of a sudden, the white mouse, it wakes up to Ruby and says, "Ruby, I've lost the cursor. Can you help me find the cursor?" And Ruby says, "Oh, of course, I'm the best computer debugger I know of." And they make themselves really, really small and crawl inside of the computer and fall deep, 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 deep inside until they hit the layer of electricity, where there's billion of tiny switches that only know how to go on and off, on and off. They either pass electricity or they don't pass electricity. We call these things bits. And Ruby says, we could find the cursor here, but it's going to take forever because we need 8 bits for one single letter. Let's climb higher. And they meet the logic gates that take those bits. They are tiny mathematical operators that take the bits and do a little bit more complex math with them, but still at the level of primary school kids. And Ruby says, we could find the cursor here, but let's climb higher. And they meet the hardware of the computer, the bossy CPU that is really good at giving instructions to everyone else, like fetch, execute, store, but really forgetful, so it needs help from the RAM and the ROM and the mass storage. And the children Ruby and the mouse, they meet the operating system, and finally they actually do find the cursor. You'll need to read the book to discover how. But I think more importantly, they get this idea of how electricity turns into logic, how logic turns into hardware, how hardware turns into software, and how software turns into the apps, programs, and games we use every single day. And as a result, I'm hoping that the children would get this sense that while computers are magical, they are not made of magic. While computers are magical, they are not made of magic, they are made of logic. And why is this important? Well, because this is the last generation of children that will remember the computer we know today, the computer defined by the screen, the keyboard, and the mouse. For the next generation, there's already hundreds of computers in their houses. Their teddy bear is a computer, their toothbrush is a computer. And we really need to start updating the metaphors of how we talk about computers and what even is a computer. So I do this activity with the children where I give them these little on-off stickers, tiny stickers, and I tell them, this afternoon alone you have this ability to turn anything in this room into a computer by placing the sticker on it. And I've collected these everyday items like a tuna can and a shampoo bottle and a lipstick. And one day a little girl with a bicycle lamp comes to me, and she's chosen, and she's put the little sticker on the bicycle lamp, and she tells me, Linda, if this bicycle lamp, if it was a computer, I could go on a biking trip with my father. We could sleep in a tent, and this bicycle lamp, it could also be a movie projector. And I think that's the moment we are all looking for. Not the moment when the kid understands if-else statements in Python or the differences between arrays and hashes in Ruby, but the moment when they understand that the world is not ready yet, that technology is a wonderful way to make the world a little bit more ready, and then finally, for a moment, that she herself could be a part of the change. She felt that she could be the very first computer, bicycle, lamp, movie projector innovator. And I think that is the kind of attitude we want to be safeguarding in our children. So how do we explain what a computer is then for a generation that will only be having discussions with their computers? We can't tell them anymore that a computer has a screen, a keyboard, and a mouse. It's curious that in order to explain what the computers will be in the future, we need to go all the way back to the year 1945, when John von Neumann came up with the famous von Neumann architecture of a computer. At a time when computers were the size of this room, now they fit into our pockets. The basic operating principle of a computer is still the same. A little bit simplified, but von Neumann said is that a computer is a device that inputs information, the information is processed somehow, and then the modified information comes out, and then there's storage that stores that information. And this is true when you go on Facebook and you like something, in goes the information that someone has liked this post, out comes the updated like count. But this is also true when you sit in a car and you forget to buckle your seatbelt. In goes the information that someone is sitting here in the car, and out comes the beep, beep, beep noise we all hate so much. And I think input, process, output is still one of the most powerful things we can teach to our children. And it's much needed. Because I don't actually think that it's important to teach our kids coding. I think much more important it is to give them a robust mental model, the idea of a notional machine. So a robust mental model of what a computer is good at and what a human is good at. And that brings us to the final letter. So A for algorithm, B for Boolean logic, and C for creativity and computers. And this starts with the idea of artificial intelligence and machine learning, which are probably huge buzzwords also here in Sweden. I feel like every week I read a paper and there's someone who says, oh my God, the jobs are going to be destroyed, the Terminators are coming, the Skynet is always here. And I feel like we're like raising this medieval monster, and everything we don't understand, we fear. So in the same way as the medieval people, when they were making maps, everywhere they didn't know where, like every area of the map they didn't recognize, they would just write, here be the dragons. And I think that's the attitude, the layman's attitude towards AI and machine learning. And the challenging bit is we're moving that attitude to our children. One year I was in London and a small boy comes to me and says, Linda, what will I do when I grow up if the computers take all the jobs? And we don't want a fearful generation. I think what we want is a fearless, pragmatic and optimistic generation of children. Understand that already today there are so many different kinds of intelligences we humans possess. Some of us are really good at singing, some of us learn to do cartwheels well, some of us make friends really quickly. And what artificial intelligence and machine learning actually represent is only a very narrow kind of intelligence, very good at solving certain types of problems, but we're no closer to the general intelligence that we humans have. And another thing I would like to highlight to the children is that machine learning and AI is not only robots. Actually, the far more powerful stuff that is happening right now is happening in the realm of data. Because the more exciting stuff in AI is not happening with the robots. It's happening when we all of a sudden have so much data about the world. Every time you click something online, data is created. And then that data is packaged into new kinds of services that make our societies better and make our lives easier. And while we talk about machine learning as if we're giving computers these abilities that used to belong to us humans, abilities like being able to see, communicate, move, reason, maybe even be creative, fundamentally, the advances in machine learning and AI have nothing to do with human intelligence. They have everything to do with data. So let me explain like I would explain for a 6-year-old. In the past, if we wanted to learn if this thing here is a cat, we would have needed to write these very exact instructions about what a cat looks like. So a cat is an animal with 2 ears, and it comes in these 5 colors. And these instructions would be extremely brittle. They would break down easily, and computers were not very good at recognizing cats. What we do nowadays is we give computers examples of cats. So first we pose a question for a computer, is this thing here a cat? And then we gather the computer millions of examples of cats. So for instance, we have YouTube nowadays, which has so many cat videos. So when the Google engineers wanted to teach a computer to recognize a cat, they first fed it hundreds of thousands of hours of cat videos. Then the computer looks at these examples of cats and builds a model. And then it gives an answer. But more importantly, it actually doesn't give an answer. It gives an estimation, a probability, a prediction. And when we look at this whole loop of machine learning, gathering data, asking questions, answering questions, we recognize that there's lots of places where we humans belong. We are the ones who ask the questions. We are the ones who get the training data. And we are ultimately the ones who decide whether the answer is something we want a to do or a human to do. Because there's cases where it's okay that we have a 60% certainty of an answer being right or wrong. But then there's things in our judicial system, in our healthcare, in our education, where we want the humans to still interfere with the machines. And another area where I think a lot of our jobs in the future will be is the training data. So if machine learning means that we're teaching computers with examples, someone needs to gather those examples. And with the kids, we practice with a very simple example. Show them these pictures, and I say, we're trying to teach the computer to recognize a cat. What kind of bias might the computer get about the idea of a cat if it only looks at these 4 pictures? And the kids say, maybe that all cats are grey. And I say, bingo, now draw a cat that is, I don't know, brown or has stripes in it. What about teacups? What is the bias? What is the unintended bias we are teaching to the machine by only showing these kinds of teacups? Well, first of all, it wouldn't recognize grandma's cupcakes with the flowers on it. It wouldn't recognize a Japanese teacup that doesn't have a handle. And it actually wouldn't even recognize a teacup with a handle on the left-hand side. And these seem like innocent examples. But as we are automating more and more of our society with artificial intelligence, this is the last moment when we can include more diversity in the people who are building these systems, so that we don't accidentally build a hospital system that only recognizes nurses who are female, or even worse examples. And with the kids, we practice. And I think especially here in Scandinavian countries, we need to be really careful in this. This was a student who wanted to teach the computer what a happy person looks like by cutting out images of people. And you can immediately see the problem we have here in a very homogeneous society. Here's some cat examples from small children. And this is one of my favorites. It's a Singaporean girl who wanted to teach the computer to recognize a unicorn. And she was fiercely proud when she knew how to draw a unicorn from behind. So again, I would want kids to understand that while artificial intelligence is magical, it's not made of magic. It's the same process of input, process, output that we already practice with regular computers. This time, it just affects us all. And my final story has to do with an article I read a few months ago. The article had Cambridge University researchers who showed children two sets of pictures. One set of the pictures had pictures of natural world items like trees, plants, and animals. And the other set of pictures had pictures of Pokemon species. And by far, the children were much better at recognizing the Pokemon. They had more language and vocabulary to describe the Pikachu than the birch tree, the Bulbasaur than the badger. The researchers were worried because what happens to our sense of agency, our ability to interact with the world when we don't have language to describe it? And I would worry about the same thing. I worry about a world where we don't have language to express the 7 different kinds of snow we get here in Scandinavian countries, but I think the same exact thing is happening in the world of technology. We have a ton of these suitcase words, these words that pack a lot inside of them, but never let anything out. Words like Bitcoin, words like algorithm, words like blockchain. Throw these suitcases from one person to another and never actually open them up. And I think this is especially bad when it comes to engineers. We are the worst because we never update the metaphors we used to talk about something. So one year I had a little boy who came to me and said, "Linda, is internet a place?" And I said to him, "No, internet is not a place. Internet is this global interconnected network of servers. Think of it like the information superhighway. It's like the global village. You can go surfing online." And then I recognize that I sound like a kid of the 1990s. This child has never disconnected from the internet. The internet is something invisible everywhere around him. And my metaphors are completely outdated. The information superhighway, what is that? So should I explain to him that the internet is a bunch of servers that go from the fiber optic cable that go from the bottom of the sea all the way to the space? Or these villages of servers that store the data that we generate? Or should I talk about that data and talk about the software side of the internet, how there's protocols that define how the data travels around the world 8 times in a second? Or should I talk about videos, the funny memes, the Gangnam styles and the baby sharks that happen when the 6 billion of us can finally connect to one another, the explosion of creativity? And I think this is the challenge in teaching technology. It's not only hardware, it's not only software, and it's not only the societal impact technology is having. It's teaching all these 3 things at the same time, and the damn things keep changing all the time. So I'm going to end with a Swedish story. Astrid Lindgren, who famously, probably one of the most famous children's book writers in the world. She was famous for budding into the world of politics. I think a lot of you know about how she wrote the Pomperipossa i Monismani and the Veckans Affär front page, a children's story about the marginal taxes. And the then minister called her and said, "I think children's book authors should stick being children's book author. Let the politicians handle the tax regulation." And Astrid pretty famously said that politics is too important to be left for politicians. And I would echo the current idea or the remix of that idea to be that technology is too important to be left for technologists. And I think that is the key to answering the next 100 years of engineering education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But don't sit down quite yet.
We still have time.
We have
Oh, good.
sort of like 2 minutes or something
Yeah,
like that.
I promised that I would be on time, but
Yeah, you nearly made it.
nearly.
But just nearly. Okay, that was great, and it's fantastic, and this way of telling the kids about science and computer science is so fantastic. Do you plan to follow this up? You're going to write many more books, other areas?
I'm working on a book about the history of computers, because I think we have this metaphor about the computer coming from the sky, and I think what the computer actually is, it's born from the ground, and how many different kinds of professions, from material scientists to cognitive scientists to mathematicians to poets, needed to come together and work for hundreds of years for the modern computers to come up. So it will be kind of like a Canterbury Tales meets the history of computer science. And then I'm working on like a YouTube video series for primary school teachers that is called Love Letters to Computers, which will be out in fall. So hopefully that will be a way to help people see the world of computer science the way I see it, as one of the highest intellectual achievements of humankind, and also one of the most curious and beautiful sciences out there.
But you stick to computer science. I mean, I'm a chemist, so I'd like you to write one about chemistry as well.
Maybe. I think computer science is a weird discipline because we are butting into everyone else's disciplines. So
we have serious problems with recruitment.
Yeah, probably I will need to learn about chemistry also at some point.
Other questions, comments, and so on. Keep them short in that case.
Yeah.
Tuula?
I'm wondering, in all of, sorry. In all of this, I've actually been wanting to ask this from you for a long time. The thing is, I mean, in Aalto University we had this period when all the industries were asking us to do more coding, and to have programmers, and all the professors said that, we are not going. That's not our task. Yeah. And my question is, I mean, when I look at, how you teach and how universities teach, is there any hope for universities?
Absolutely. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Finland right now, and I'm happy to share later on. I'm actually chairman of a private foundation that is run by Supercell called Hive Helsinki, and the idea is to offer vocational level coding education for kids who never see themselves as computer scientists at university level. And we're working very closely with the Aalto folks and also the vocational level people, and I think many of them, we were worried that they would see Hive as competition. What they see them as a pedagogical lab, a place where they can experiment with future ways of teaching things, and they are really excited. So yes, there's a lot of hope when we share and work together.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other final question, comment?
I'll be here afterwards. So
okay, otherwise, thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Ghita Wolf Andreasen, who's the Director of Engineer the Future in Denmark. And you'll be telling us about your very interesting initiative where you gather different types of organizations and spread the message to the young people, not least, as I understand it, provide them an education. So, please, I will start the computer for you.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, and the speaker's on. Yep. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me to Stockholm on a very beautiful afternoon. I'm so impressed that you're all here. I have 20 minutes. Martin, please give me a sign after 15 so I have an idea, because I might get too excited. Now, I was really impressed by the presentation you did, Linda. I'm going to do something completely different, but I think that's the good thing about the 2 hours today, that we get the different perspectives. This is my last slide. Oops, so I'll just jump very quickly. Ooh.
I thought it was a strange slide.
Yeah. So very briefly, just talk to you in 10 seconds, why bother? I think Martin presented already, but why bother in Denmark? Who is Engineer the Future and what do we do? And I'm going to give you 2 examples of the activities that we do. And in the end, I try to be a little more strategic and reflect about the approach that we've done in Denmark to see if we can move this agenda. And I can do this slide very quickly because the numbers we have in Denmark on this issue, it's exactly the same. So we're facing exactly the same challenge. I want to highlight to you that we have, when you look at universities, 60% of women go to university, but it's still only 3 out of 10 when we look at engineering and science. Exactly the same numbers. Another thing is, these are numbers from 15, showing it's a global problem. So even though we might be able to attract engineers from all over the world, it's not going to solve the problem. And honestly, for us, it's a democratic problem. If our young kids don't participate in developing the technologies for tomorrow, it's really, really a shame. So I think it's not about everyone becoming an engineer, but it's giving them the tools. And in that aspect, Linda and I very much agree. We might look at it in different ways, but it's the same issue. So that's why 5 years ago, the Danish Society of Engineers, the Danish industry organizations, companies, and all the engineering universities in Denmark grouped together to solve the problem. And that's the first takeaway for today. If we want to solve this problem, we need to work together. And we have 2 broad goals, or our overall vision is really that we want to change the understanding and the reputation of technology experts and engineers. And I'm going to show you our branding campaign that we've been doing for 5 years. Some of you might have seen it before. And then we know from international research we have to start very, very, very early. It's even in Denmark now, it's very hyped that you actually need to start do STEM activities in preschool. And I think when we talk about biases, it all starts in preschool and it starts at home. So I'm going to share with you, so we actually have 3 different initiatives, and I'm going to dig into 2 of them. The branding campaign, which is all about reputation, Engineering is School, which is a 10-year program where we try to integrate engineering into the science subjects in school. And then I want to highlight, but I'm not going to talk more about it, we have a school service called Book an Expert. So you can actually, so the companies that are members of Engineer the Future, we train their employees to go and do a hands-on visit. And the hands-on part is very important, because you don't want someone to come into the room and just do a presentation like I'm doing right now. We know they need to get their hands into things. And how lovely wouldn't it be if you get someone that can actually split apart a mobile phone, build a speaker with them, because many teachers won't be able to do that. So that's Book an Expert. You can go to our homepage and see how that works. Our branding campaign. Please, if you have your mobile phone, try to go to Google and write engineer and pick images. I did it yesterday. I haven't done it in Swedish, so if someone would try ingenjör in Swedish, but this still works in Danish and even in English, it's hard hat, white socks, mainly men. If women, in Denmark at least, they're still white. And everything is construction and buildings. Did someone try? This so. Oh, there's a woman here waving her hand. That's the Swedish. You are a little more progressive than Danes. But if you do it in English, it's even worse. I mean, that's the case. That's the stereotyping of engineers. So what we've done with our branding campaign, we're very aware, if this is a high school class, we know there's a small group of students that's science skilled, and they've actually decided to go and do a STEM education. We just need, when they see our branding campaign, we just want to confirm they're going in the right direction. We know there's a very large group that would never ever consider it, but they're going to work together with engineers and tech experts. So we still need to raise our understanding on what's an engineer. Now there's the group in the middle, and Martin, you talked about them earlier on. They're very good in math. They're very good in languages. They're very good in sciences. They want to do, and they do education in psychology because they want to change the world. We need to tell them, because that's the group of young people we call the potentials, and their parents, that if you want to change the world, why not consider becoming an engineer? So I'm going to show you one of the movies that we show in cinemas right now, because we know at least in Denmark, 1/3 of all young people making a cross now within a week or two, what kind of education do they want to study for? They're still in doubt. So who knows, we might be able to inspire them.
Jeg har altid gerne vil være opfinder. Da jeg var 6 år gammel, kørte en spøgelsesbilist imod os. Bagefter fortalte jeg min mor om en idé, som kunne have stoppet bilen. Jeg har lige siden været på jagt efter ting, jeg kan ændre og gøre bedre. Bare lidt. Min sport og mit arbejde er dybt forbundet. Det ene er den andens pause. Min drøm er at være med på holdet, der gennem IT automatiserer trafikken fuldstændigt, så færre mister livet. Trafikken bliver jo flyvende en dag. Jeg har altid gerne vil være opfinder. Ingeniør er det, der kommer tættest på.
Se mere på engineerthefuture.dk.
So that's the universe, that's the stories we're trying to tell, and the feedback we get. See how little technology there's in this, and how much storytelling there is about the personal dreams and ideas. That's the branding campaign. What's the achievement since we started in 2014? The uptake or the intake of students in Denmark on engineering has had an increase of 26%. I don't know, how's that in Sweden? Looking back 5 years? Are you seeing the same? Really? Now, of course, it's not only our campaign, but the universities pay 50,000 euro per year to support this campaign. So they are tracking our results, and if we don't perform, they could use this amount of money on their own campaigns instead. So we do a lot of evaluation of the campaign, and there's a lot of questions about, are we actually able to change attitude? And it's very interesting, the high increase we've seen in interest in engineering, not so high in the image, and I can't explain the difference. And I'm really curious to see this summer, will we still be able to see an increasing intake? And honestly, the bad news is we don't see more women. The balance is still the same. So of course, there are more women, but the balance is still 30-70. That was the branding campaign. The other thing I'm going to talk about is engineering in school. It's and thank you again, Martin, because you shared the same research that we have in Denmark. This is a very recent study showing exactly the same. Girls' interest decreased more than boys' interest from 4th and 5th grade to 8th and 9th grade. And the other one, and that's very important, that's probably the second takeaway today, engineering in school, we focus on the teacher. Because there's a lot of research showing us that's the single most important element for children's learning. So with all respect, all the campaigns we do, all the events, all the materials, the teacher is the key. If we can make them change their teaching method in the STEM subjects in school, that's the key. So what we've done is we've developed a 10-year program, not a project, but a program. We have the finance for the first 3 years from private foundations, that's 5 million euros. Right now we're applying for the next 5 million euros. We're developing a Danish engineering didactic based on an American didactic. We have a teacher's professional development program developed with teachers' university colleges in Denmark. We've developed teaching material, and we integrate that into existing events. So if you're a teacher participating in science festivals in Denmark, you might have done it for 5 or 10 years. Suddenly, engineering materials would turn up. So instead of inventing a lot of new events, because we have a lot in Denmark, we try to integrate it. And the teachers' professional development training also integrated to the teachers' university colleges. This is not done by Engineer the Future on our own. Again, it's a partnership with all the teachers' colleges, municipalities, science centers, science actors, engineering society, you name it. We've tried to group everyone together. And the good news for us is that in Denmark we talk a lot about STEM education, but honestly, science and math doesn't go very well together. We don't really integrate it in school, and technology is really difficult for teachers. And technology is much more than programming and coding. So engineering, working as an engineer, actually gives them a possibility to work with technology because they don't need to have the solutions. And the engineering design process is very... how many engineers do we have in the room at the moment? Wonderful, almost half. This is a simplified version that we use in school. It's about understanding a very specific problem, working through different phases. Very important in primary school is construction and improving several times, and at some point you have to present your prototype, and for sure it's not finished, because the whole idea is to reflect about the mistakes you do and try to improve it. So to give you a very specific example, vertical farming is actually a topic that both boys and girls are really eager to solve. So the problem is we're all moving into the cities, urbanization. We need food. It's very, very hard to grow food unless we do vertical farming. So that's the problem. And then they developed over a longer or shorter period different prototypes. And I visited a class a couple of weeks ago. They were finalizing the prototypes and they had to do watering system. There were 5 groups. They made 5 different solutions. Some of them very advanced coding, mini computers called microbits, and others doing very simple solutions. And this is what it's all about. So the teacher will start facilitating this process. They don't know the answers, and children make different solutions and get inspired, steal the best ideas from the colleagues and get inspired. That's what engineering can do. A lot of you working as engineers know this, but now it's actually in school. We've been going on for 2 years, which is not very long, and honestly we're quite surprised to see that apart from programming, engineering is the new black. And that's because we're working with everyone in the field. If we had done this, and I think that's what we've seen in Denmark, we have around 600 different projects in elementary school trying to improve interest in STEM. But the problem is it's a project, it's 3 years, and very often driven by one person that's really dedicated. For the first time, we've done something completely different. We've worked in a partnership. So we have 10% of all municipalities after 2 years committing to the big package, training all their STEM teachers, and more than 50% of all municipalities have tried our engineering activities already. All teachers' university colleges have signed up. 2 of them already implemented engineering in the teacher training ground module, and hopefully the last 4 will follow within 5 years. And we're doing the best we can now. Hopefully very soon we'll get a new government and a new minister, and hopefully they can see the idea of engineering. My last slide is really summing up the approach that we've taken in Engineer the Future. And I'm not saying that's the only solution, but at least that's something that worked very well for us. So both Engineer the Future and engineering in school is a cross-sectoral partnership. And at least when you look at the private foundations in Denmark today, giving quite a lot of money to STEM education, collective impact is the new black. So working across sectors, you can actually change or you can solve society challenges. Another thing, we're really, really ambitious when it comes to showing impact. And we experience, again, from the Danish private foundations, they want to see real impact. Again, with all the projects, how can we prove that we make a difference? Within 10 years, we hope that we can show that we actually improve STEM learning in elementary school. It's extremely ambitious, but you have to be ambitious, otherwise close it down. With companies specifically, because they're paying for our campaign as well, we see that corporate volunteering is really increasing. They just don't give a simple sponsorship anymore. They also want to get involved. Now, that's both good and bad. It means that they might minimize the amount of sponsorship, but the sponsorships they really do, they get really involved. So book an expert where they have employers going to the school is a very good solution. And the last thing is that we're in it for the long term. At the moment, we talk about 10 years. We don't have the money yet, but we want to show that it's not just a project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ghita. It's a fantastic initiative, and it's impressive that you managed to gather the forces in this way.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to
Yes.
make them come together?
Is it still difficult? Yes. It really, really is. Because even though we all say we have a common agenda and we can see the shining star, every day there's a problem on my table to get people to work together. Every day. Why? Because if you're a teacher's university college, you might have a group of educators that are really excited about engineering. But then there's another group, they really want to do programming, or another group that wants to do something completely different. So in every organization, there's always a discussion going, what's the most important? Having said that, I think we've managed very well, but when you have companies on board, if there's a new HR director and he or she was the one that was signing up with Engineer the Future, there might be something else that's important. So they'll call me and say, it's not that what you do is not good, but now there's something else. So it's there, but don't stop. I mean, when you look at the numbers after 2 years from engineering school, I mean, and it's everyone working towards that goal. That's the impressive part.
Yeah. That's very impressive. What about the application pressure? You mentioned the application pressure to become an engineer has increased the last number of years, as I understand it. What about sort of other science-related educations, such as MD, scientists?
Actually, I was the number you showed me. I was surprised because we don't see any change on science topics. Science educations.
It's interesting. That data is a bit old because it's UNESCO data, so it's I think 2014 or something like that. So it's a little bit old.
Yeah. So that's the bad news. So the next thing I need to do is probably to work with science.
Yeah. Should do. Comments, questions, please.
Sorry, I do have a question. You
Could you please
about
just say who you are?
Sorry, Disa Jernid from Mattecentrum. You talked about, or you showed the video or the advertisement of how you approach them with storytelling.
Yeah.
Have you also done the research and come up with methods of how to change your teaching material or your approach to teaching to reach girls?
Yeah, so when we do the teaching material, it's based on the engineering process. And we haven't done a Danish study yet. We really, really would like to do it. But looking at American studies, what we see is that the engineering method actually inspires all groups of children. So it's not only the girls, even boys that have difficulty sitting still really, really enjoy doing this. Very, very clever girls get really challenged once you have to go from paper to construction. But we'd love to do this research in Denmark because it might be different than in the States.
As a follow-up question then, or that, no, because also the findings, and I know with teaching programming then, or coding specifically, it's been with the American studies as well, of looking at when you do the community projects or the group collaboration, then girls tend to be more engaged rather than the individual, and that was, if engineering is showing the same. So,
we've had, if there's just time, we've had a lot of discussions about doing things specifically for girls or not, and I'm really looking forward to hear the rest of the presentations, because I didn't mention that, but we're not doing specific things for girls, but we are very aware, whatever we do, we balance diversity in the campaign and the material. But it's still difficult. You see people being, we had someone illustrate our engineering didactic. I was crying when I saw it. It was still mainly boys doing the boom and the girls writing the notes. Now, this illustrator didn't do it on purpose, but that's the biases. So we really need to be aware in everything we do. Another funny fact I want to tell you is that we've seen with the movies we do, we don't need to have a woman as role model. It really depends on the theme. So we have actually one with someone that studied a chemist. Mm-hmm. And he wants to cure malaria, and the girls love the movie. So we really need to be aware when we want to address this.
Well, we have time for one more, I think. Okay. In that case, I'll just ask one. Just one question, and we talk a lot about the girls and so on, and as we saw in my slides, we have another problem with the boys that are not performing as well on the average, obviously. Yeah. Do you have the similar problem in Denmark?
Yeah.
Okay, throughout the educational system.
Yeah. So we've started talking about within very few years. That's going to be a very big focus, and even in elementary now it is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please. And talk to Ghita when in the reception afterwards. Get all the knowledge we need to develop the Swedish society as well. Now we're going to go home, so to speak. We're going to look at two interesting initiatives that we run here at IVA. It's the Junior Academy, and it's also something called the Technology Leap, or as we say in Swedish, Tekniksprånget. But we'll start with Maja Nejman, who will tell us a bit about the Junior Academy. Maja, please.
Thank you.
There we go. It's there at least.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin. So I'm here to talk about the Junior Academy, which is a brand new initiative from IVA to support and encourage already interested teenagers to really thrive in their interest for STEM and problem solving. This is not something we have invented. We have teamed up with a really strong organization, the New York Academy of Sciences, and we have created a partnership to launch their international program here in Sweden. So the Junior Academy, it's a completely international and virtual program. It's both a community and a competition. And it evolves around innovation challenges. So it invites kids, teenagers between 13 and 18 years of age, to collaborate in international teams and to solve humanity's biggest challenges right here, right now. And these are no fictional problems to solve. It's the most acute and real challenges that engineers throughout the globe work on right now. It's completely cost-free. It's all covered by sponsors and support from different organizations, and it gathers both students, mentors, and experts from around the globe. I want to tell you a little bit more about the challenges, because those are broad themes related to the United Nations goals for a sustainable future, and this means that all of the challenges need to have a foundation to be globally interesting. Last year, there were 2 challenges during the fall. One was the future of buildings and cities, and the other one was called wildfires, tracking, prevention and containment. And the idea is to present these broad themes that can be about creating a better world in the future, or how to tackle the consequences of the climate crisis that we see right now. And this challenge was launched at the very same time as the world's greatest wildfires raged throughout the globe. And what's really inspiring is that these kids, the students, get 70 days of a 70 days activity to solve these problems, to solve the challenge. And it's not 70 days full-time work, it's 70 days spare time work. So they sit up in their evenings and in their weekends and they brainstorm and they go through the whole scientific and engineering process that we heard about before of brainstorming, creating hypotheses and testing and iterating and testing again, and then finally presenting a solution. I also need to say that the challenge rounds are preceded by an online boot camp so that the kids are not thrown out to just explore however they want to. They get a lot of training to really be well equipped to be able to succeed. It's optional to create a team, but it's very, very encouraged. In this program, it's a very strong aspect that diversity really drives innovation. And they do that in a very realistic way. So the students form teams themselves within the virtual network, and then every team is assigned a mentor. And then we have a panel of experts that are expert to every specific field that are available for all of the students. And then the most brilliant or innovative ideas are selected as winners and finalists, and those students are invited to a global gathering in New York each summer. So it's the Global STEM Alliance Summit in New York, the last week of July, where all of these brilliant minds get together and to present their ideas, and not only to each other, but also to world leaders and company leaders that have the possibility to take the kids' ideas into a reality. The application is open for anyone between the age of 13 to 18. So it's only based on interest and curiosity and will to participate. But that said, it's a very tough application and it's a tough competition to get admitted. We believe that this program is for anyone who's curious and who loves science and solving problems, but also for anyone who really needs a challenge, because we see that in school today, school systems are not really enough to challenge the really encouraged or the really inspired kids. But it's also for all of these teenagers who worry about their future and want to do something about it. So to turn their climate anxiety into an optimistic international collaboration and do something. Last year we had 6,000, or the international program had 6,000 applicants and 600 were enrolled from 85 different countries. Throughout the 4 years this program has been active internationally, Sweden has only had 17 applicants and 2 have been admitted. So that's why our initiative from IVA is needed to highlight, to present this program for Sweden. And right now, we have 139 applicants from Sweden for this round. The application closes July 1st, next Monday. So if any of you know an interested teenager, please grab a folder outside and put it in their face, I was about to say. It's not a massive number of applicants, but we are just starting. It's the first year that we start to launch this in Sweden, and the response from schools and teachers and kids and other organizations is really, really fantastic. What I'm most happy about is actually the geographical distribution. We have somehow achieved to get applicants from most of Sweden, and we have a very nice gender distribution. We have a majority of female, we have some transgender people applying, and also males. And what I think is really special about Junior Academy, especially in relation to other types of technological or technology competitions, is that it has this aspect of the social impact on technology challenges. What it also has is a pedagogical point of try and try again. When kids apply to this program, they get accepted into the community, and they are members for life. And once they are members, they can enter as many competition rounds as they want to. So it's built into the program, try a round, fail with success and try again. It takes on the issue that global challenges require global solution and international collaboration. And it has a really large respect for young ideas. And I think that's really important. Thank you very much.
So, Maja, just one very short question now. Why is it important that it's in an international setting?
I think it's really important to show these students that there are people with the same interest and optimism to do something about it, even though they come from completely different backgrounds. So this is a way where a kid from Bangladesh and one from Singapore and a Swede and one from the United States can get together and talk about recycling with completely different background perspectives. So I think it's really important, and also to train them for a future where international collaborations is just, it's a normal thing to do. So that shouldn't be an extra hinder to start working internationally.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we'll move on, but please stay there.
Yes.
And Binette Seck will come up, who is the Client Relations Manager at the EVA Initiative of Technology Leap.
Wow.
So you'll tell us about that. And here are your slides, I hope. Yeah, here we go.
In my role at EVA, I get to create internships for young people between the ages of 18 and 20. It's basically the upper secondary graduates. Just imagine being between the ages of 18 and 20. How did your life look like? Especially for those who were interested in engineering or have a sort of a irking feeling that I really would love to know where technology is today. And what can technology do for me tomorrow? But I want to find out now, right? You don't want to wait until after you have completed a university degree. So Tekniksprånget, Tech Leap, is a internship program for young people as such. And Jobbsprånget, I'm not going to spend that much time talking about it, but it's an internship program as well for newcomer academics. I think I'm going to go for this one. I just want to set the scene a little bit. The reason why we feel that competence is crucial. We know that skills are needed. When you look at the organizations, companies you've worked for and currently is working for, even if you are an entrepreneur, you will definitely look for skills, right? But how do you generate or create skills? So if you would zoom out, consider this as a camera lens. Zoom out, you would look at the reason why skills are needed. There's an extremely rapid technological development and technological change, I would say, for the past decades that is really pushing the organizations to think differently, to become a more attractive employer. And also, the thing is, we have a lot of young people that wants to become the future of that company, but they want to find out, is this right for me? Can I become one of those engineers? We actually have one in this room. Anna, would you like to stand up? She applied to Tekniksprånget. It's via a portal called tekniksprånget.se. And once you apply, you choose where you would like to work tomorrow, but today. So whatever you choose, it's up to you. We never tell you which company you should go for or which background you should have, etc. You actively choose your line of work, depending on what you're interested in. So I remember many years ago when I worked for Ericsson, for instance, and we talked about how we can integrate the smartphone functionality into a physical Volvo car. And back then, it was a high-tech thing. Like, how do we create physical products and how do we make them smarter by integrating the functionality? Now we talk about self-driven cars, and tomorrow who knows what we will be talking about. This rapid technological change is not unique for Sweden. It's a global competition. Basically, the people in this room can get a job anywhere in the world. So the question is, how do we make sure that Sweden becomes and continuously is in the forefront when it comes to technology? How do we become competitive in tech? I also want to share a story with Hedvig Hansson. And Anna, I think next time you will be on that page. Hedvig, she applied to Tekniksprånget. She was very unsure of what she wanted to become in the future. So she applied as a young person, 18 and 20. She had recently started, working and studied natural science. And she wanted to know, am I going to become an engineer? So that question mark, we have thousands of young people that are carrying that question with them. So what we say at TechLeap is, apply today. Whatever it is you think you can do tomorrow, apply today. And you will be given salary for 4 months to complete an internship. It's not the kind of internship where you go, next to someone. No, you will actually get to work. You will be able to look into machine learning and AI and other types of interesting fields today. You don't have to wait until tomorrow. 4 months of paid internship, huh? It sounds quite good. The ages are 18 to 20. That sounds fair enough. One thing that I really want you to remember, though, is that the young people that are applying, we have thousands of them up until the year we started with Tekniksprånget 2012. Until today, I would say around 17,000 young people have applied. And out of 10, 6 of them are very insecure. Do I really want to pursue this degree? Do I really want to pursue a degree within engineering and tech? Is this for me, for people like me? So no matter where you live, no matter the gender, no matter what type of support you might need, you are welcome to apply. And this is one of the major ways to influence young people to become engineers. I have a few numbers that I want you to take with you as well. And Johan Forsell, he is one of the members of the steering group committee. Tuula is as well. And one of the things that he says is that we need to think long-term when it comes to skills and inspire young people to become engineers. That's basically what he's saying. But also to see the possibility to create a good future and a good job for this individual today. So 7 out of the 10 interns, they state that Tekniksprånget, TechLeap, influenced their choice of studies. So earlier on, rather than waiting until you have completed your degree, you can actually find out if you want to become an engineer, and you actually get paid for it during that time. 8 out of 10, to be specific, 82% of all the interns pursue university degrees straight after the internship, which is, some of the numbers that I really want you to take with you. And it also has an effect long-term on the alumni. The ones that have completed a degree in university say that Tekniksprånget has really helped them to become good students, but also to understand where they want to work tomorrow. participating employers in 120 locations nationally. We've had a little bit over 3,900 who've completed an internship. These are some of the companies where the young people can apply to. We have more than the ones that can fit on this page, of course. But just imagine the type of signal that you're sending on to a young person at IBM. You can actually, between the ages of 18 and 20, you can apply, you can become an intern, you can work with us for 4 months and you can get paid while doing it. But it's not as much about the salary, it's about having access to what technology is today and getting hands-on information about what an engineer does from a day-to-day basis, and not only learning it from a theoretical aspect, but actually working as an engineer long before you even have completed a university degree. I will end there.
Thanks so much, Binette. These initiatives are really fantastic, at least we say so ourselves, and we're fiercely proud of both of them. Questions, comments, now very short ones, because we're running a little bit late, so 1 or 2 extremely short ones. Anyone? Yes, Camilla.
Just one quick comment. You didn't mention that the girls, there are 50% going into Tekniksprånget for these things, and they are going further on into engineering studies. So that's really a gender effect.
I thank you for that, Camilla. And the thing is, we have the effect of 50% is actually the employers. They choose women, and that has an effect, of course, on the program itself. So 50% of all the interns are women. And that in itself will have an effect on the universities, of course. Thank you for mentioning that.
Okay. We have to talk about this because you just stole my question. Okay, any more questions? Anything? Okay, otherwise, thank you so much. Great to have you. And please talk to them again during the reception. So now we're going to look at the 3 really interesting initiatives that are outside this house. It's the Mattecentrum, it's Hello World, and the Knox Academy. So first on stage is Karolina Lisslö from the Mattecentrum.
Yes.
That's what you call yourself in English,
Mattecentrum.
I guess? Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll leave the floor to you.
Thank you. And yeah, you will just put that picture up. My presentation is stuck in cyberspace, but I have like a little notebook here, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to manage it anyway. So my name is Karolina, and I'm from Mattecentrum. We're an NGO that was founded in 2008. And we actually started out as an initiative from our founder, who had a neighbor, a girl, who just studied on high school, and she couldn't do her homework in math. And she didn't have any parent to ask, so she was knocking on his door and asking him if he could help her. And this initiative sort of started that she kept on bringing friends, and he kept bringing friends. And then, you know, they couldn't fit in his kitchen, so they moved out and asked a school nearby if they could use one of the classrooms. So in 2008, our first math lab was founded in Stockholm. And from there, we now run about 119 math labs a week in 36 cities all around Sweden. And I said it started out as a high school initiative, and that's how it started. But we sort of figured out already in 2014 that it's not enough to just do the math tutoring in high school. So we started to go down in lower levels, in högstadiet, like grades 7 to 9. And we also founded Matteboken, which is translated into mathbook.se. So it's an online education where we started to put all the math courses with theoretical examples, video lessons, and practical examples to do your to try your knowledge. So we went back down in lower levels, the same followed on Matteboken, and we soon realized that it's not enough. I mean, if we're going to manage this problem with the declining results in PISA, we need to go further down in age. So today, Matteboken is holding from preschool classes up to the highest education on high school levels. And still, that's not really enough, because we do have more challenges than just the age different. We do figure out that, as you mentioned earlier, the math teachers are so important. From our student coming to our math lab, about 88% actually are recommended by their teachers to visit us. So they are the one most single important group to stimulate this interest for math. That would also make you the confidence to reach into higher education. Because what we find out is that, and you saw the numbers, so I don't have to repeat them, but the women are better in math, they have higher grades, and yet they do not want to apply. And this is, according to our studies, because of math anxiety. Women do not have the self-confidence in their own ability to work within STEM-related areas. So how can we solve this? I would say that of all our 500 volunteers that work in the math labs, that they would be all female role models, but that's not the reality. It's about 75% male of our volunteers. They're doing a great job. But it's about 25% of female volunteers. But what we can do is try to lift those female volunteers in our yearly or annual reports and so on, and also try to highlight them in all the different areas and possible forums that we can work within. And in 2015, where we have this immigration crisis, we were told that the municipalities of Sweden didn't really believe that kids in the age of 14 or above would reach high school levels due to lack of the Swedish language. So they wouldn't be able to actually finish their math education, because it's too much of a step to learn a new language and continue to study math, because math is a language in itself, of course, but there is some barriers. So this was not a possible consideration. So in 2016, we launched Matteboken.se into Arabic, because that was the #1 language that we didn't have enough educational materials in school. And I think that's quite interesting, because since we launched the Arabic version, we are #5 of countries using this online page. So the math tutoring has sort of left Sweden. So Sweden is in #5 using the site. But we have about 72,000 educational sessions in that Arabic version only a year. Whether if you go to our Swedish platforms, we contribute to 1.4 million pedagogic sessions each year. So something else happened. This is what I love about Mattecentrum, because we sort of adapt. Because we're an NGO, we collaborate with people from other NGOs to municipalities to the government to, of course, companies and other youth organizations. And by being sort of small and an NGO, we can adapt quite quickly. Because we didn't get any heads up that programming was sort of put into the subject math in July 2018. But thanks to our collaboration with Mattecentrum, which also has the same founder as we do, we decided to start producing also materials for younger ages. So Rymdkoden, for example, since it's the space year this year, we decided to roll out a material for teachers that also, of course, parents can use to try to stimulate and to raise this awareness and importance of programming. Programming is also quite interesting, because we did consider programming important already back in 2016. One of our biggest platforms is called pluggakuten.se. Everybody's on Pluggakuten loves that forum, but very few knows that it's actually hosted by Mattecentrum, so we have some more branding to do there. But we actually put in the 9 biggest program languages as its own subject back in 2016, and I think we have a sort of a bank of questions related to programming that raises over 50,000 or something, so that's really amazing. Something more interesting about Pluggakuten is that we also have all the STEM areas and also all the subjects in school. Oh, new standing up, so good. Even though we have all the different subjects that we have in the Swedish school system, we also see that the biggest forum or the most asked question is mathematics. 87% of all questions are related to math. Then you have technique and the other STEM subjects. But you see, that is where also the pupils have the biggest problem to find help outside of school. And I think this is also so important because the teachers are important, but so are the parents. And I don't have the time to get into how many parents I sort of attack on buses when I hear them actually telling the kids not to choose STEM-related high school or high degrees. Because I think we need like this social approach to talk about the importance of mathematics and STEM subjects, because it's not only in math. Math is in all subjects. And if we are supposed to change this whole situation and to be able to have the skills for the future, we need to sort of incorporate math and STEM into all thoughts, and it's not only the teacher, but it's at home, at the dinner table, encourage your girls. And I can continue. I didn't even reach my good example, but Anna, who was kind enough to stand up here earlier, was on our advisory board. So she's also been in our valberedning, I lost the word right now, helping us to also find the good base of role models within our board. So I think that using the youth, particularly the female ones in this case, are also important. So that's one of the good examples I just felt like lifting. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So why don't you, I won't ask you any questions just now.
So I'll do it a bit later.
Sorry, please go and stand down over there, and I'll ask when you've all done yours. So our next speaker is from Hello World. So that's Ulrika Dellby, who is the chairperson there, if I remember correctly. And I'll get you your presentation wherever it is. There it is.
Yes, and we need to go to the beginning.
Yes. I don't know what is you guys seem to want to start at the start.
No. Hello. Thank you for letting us come here and talk a little bit about Hello World. So I'll start to take you to the camp so you can see a little bit what we're doing. If I can find the... Is this? Yes. Yes, a little glimpse from the camp. Right now there are 218 kids out in Farsta, Augusta, just started their camp week yesterday. And that is one of 12 camp weeks that we're running this summer. So what is Hello World? We don't really like to be called an initiative, because initiatives come and go. So we would like to be called a platform. not an initiative. And we think about this as a joint national education project where we bring together, and you can't really see it here because of the colors, we bring together the future, the students, the kids of today, 8 to 18 years old, so thousands of kids go through our programs. We bring them together with the students of today, the engineering students who are teaching at our camps and our meetups. So they are the role models. 50% female engineering students are teachers. And they are all financed by the private companies who are financing the whole initiative. And the companies also get to meet and interact with the engineering students, which is one of the values for them, because they are very, very attractive, of course, given the competence shortage that we're having in the society. We also don't talk about STEM, we talk about STEAM, adding the A for arts, because we think it's really, really important to take the full spectrum there. So what we've done so far is what we're aiming for, giving digital competence to everybody. And so far it has worked really well. We have 35% girls among the participants. And that we've talked about. We have not talked about today that we also have a big problem that we don't attract kids from low-income households, from households who don't have academic parents. And that is maybe an even broader problem today. And we are trying to address that as well. And we have about 10% of our participants participate on scholarships, so free of charge. And about 35% get reduced fees. We have income-based fees so that everyone should be able to go to our camps. And that is then financed by the companies who are financing this. On a geographic spectrum, we are welcoming kids from all over Sweden. So we actually had kids from 19 of Sweden's 21 counties last year, and this year it's going well as well. And they come to the camps on train that SJ is sponsoring so that they can go free of charge. And in terms of the content, what we're teaching, it is from beginners to advanced kids. So a lot of beginning courses, a very broad range of different subjects that are taught, up to the really advanced that are sometimes even better than our engineering students in terms of their programming skills when they get there. And when we ask the kids after they have completed the camp week, 93% of them say that they are inspired to learn more. And that is the ambition that we have, that they should go on and keep learning and coming back, of course. When we came up with this idea, Dag, my husband, and I came up with this crazy idea of trying to do something about this competence gap. It was inspired by our own son starting programming and wanting to go to a camp, and we didn't find any. That was 4 years ago, and it has really taken off since then. So in the first year, we had 416 digital stars, 1 camp week or 5 visits to our meetups, weekend courses. Last year, we had accumulated 4,000, and we will reach about 6,400 this year. And we're aiming for lighting 20,000 digital stars together with Teknikföretagen, who is our new main sponsor. So there's a big interest, and there wouldn't be any Hello World at all if it wasn't for the partners. So about 80 partners are sponsoring this and financing this. And since we started 4 years ago, they have collectively contributed with 35 million SEK to this initiative, to this platform. Now I used the word. And we couldn't do anything without them, because if we would charge what it costs to take a kid to a camp, we would have very, very few. It's very expensive to try to teach something like digital and programming to kids. So thank you to our partners. In terms of what we believe are success factors, the first one and the big sort of idea that everything is based on is exposure. We have to expose as many kids as possible to the subjects. We need to reach everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of their gender. And really, if we can get everyone to just in an inspiring setting discover and develop skills, then many more will choose this track going forward. We also believe very much in interest-based content, and that's how we sort of lure the kids into our camps, by putting something together that they are interested in. And we have done these combination camps. You saw they danced street dance in the film. They do that. They go horseback riding. We have golf combination camps. We had philosophy last year. We have multi-activity sports, etc. And when we do that, then we get the girls. So for our track, Lua, Minecraft and Maker Studio together with horse riding, we have 100% girls. So you can do it if you just sort of put the content together so that they are interested. And then they come there and then they say, wow, technology was fantastic, I love programming. But when they got there, they didn't think that is why they were going to go to the camps. Street dance is the same. 67% girls attend those courses. Altogether, it's 35% so far. The big but is that this platform is completely dependent on the financing. Only 25% of the costs are financed by fees, and the rest is sponsoring. So we will not be able to grow more unless we find more sort of real big, long-term, stable financing. So that's where we are. Thank you. Some of the teachers.
Well, it's a really exciting platform. Okay, so we'll move on then with Helena Sjöström. Where are you? There we are. Who will tell us a little bit more about the, where are you? There you are. And I should say this also, that we're running a little bit behind, probably about 5 to 10 minutes, but this is so interesting, so I'm sure you all want to stay anyway. Also, there will be wine afterwards.
Perfect.
Usually, it does help.
Thank you so much, and happy to be here. And I come from a company called Nox, and we're actually a company in the private sector, so I'm going to tell you the story of how we started to do programming camps for kids. And like many good ideas, it started with a problem. And in our case, it was a self-experienced lack of a programming camp. It was my colleague's son who wanted to learn programming over summer and couldn't find the place to do that. So in a true entrepreneurial spirit, Nox decided to organize one. We work with, every day we work with IT consultants. So we thought, yeah, we should be suited to do this. But the first summer we did 2 weeks and we did 20 kids each week. And we had some really good learnings coming out of that summer. And the biggest learning, and what I want to sort of bring to this discussion today, is that you really need to try and test your ideas. You need to experience your ideas, because it's then you know what to do with them. And for us, the first summer, the first pilot, it didn't just work. It was magical. And it changed us. It changed us as a company. It gave us a purpose and a cause. We wanted to become a positive change in how kids today not just consume technology, but so that they can create with technology, learn how to develop with technology. So after that summer, we started Nox Academy. I'm going to go by this. So, since the beginning, more than 3,000 kids have learned programming through our different kind of programming camps. And we always do like summer, all school breaks, we do programming camps, but we have tried a lot of different, and always try a lot of different ways of doing it. So we have done open houses, we have done hackathons, we do collaborations with companies, like invite their families and staff to hackathons together. And when we do programming camps, we do it for kids between 10 to 16 years. And since the beginning, we have sort of held 50% of the places of the seats for boys and 50% for the girls. We have tried and done specific events for just girls, and we always, that's how we work, and that's, I think it's our way of doing it, is to try different strategies and see what we can bring from that and what sort of gives the best results. And when it comes to what we teach, we have tried a lot of different programming languages. Of course, we teach web, we teach Python, we teach Arduino, GameMaker, and Unity, which are powerful game platforms. And today we have a fantastic team of more than 30 tutors, teachers, and all of them are actually students themselves, so they are KTH students, but also from different universities. And during this sort of 5 years of learnings and different kind of programming camps, we have come up with a really powerful sort of best practice and tools on how to teach kids. And also a really fun spin-off from Knox Academy is that we today teach their parents. So we have a concept that we call GoTech, and in GoTech we do not programming camps, but we do crash courses. So we work with management teams, we work with HR departments, we work with politicians, we work with school teachers, as we talked about earlier, and we meet adults who come from non-engineering backgrounds, but today we all live and work at a labor market where technology is key for everyone. So we do, we have them try code, and we do workshops for a few hours where they often, most of them, write their first line of code. And it's fantastic, and I love to talk to you later on in the mingle time about the difference of teaching kids versus adults. But what we realized, and we so strongly believe, is that everyone today needs a tech mindset, because the future is going to be shaped by those who understand technology. The ones that understand technology, but also have the ability to transform that to something that creates value. So we all need a basic tech knowledge, even if we our children aren't heading for an engineering future. They still need a tech mindset. So I would say that the future belongs to the learners. Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. Now we have time for, well, we don't really, but we'll take the time, for 1 or 2 very brief questions or comments. Take the chance, or I'll take it. Okay? Nothing? Okay, I'll take it then. So one of the questions, this is a question for all of you, and unfortunately it's a big question you can only answer very briefly. Now, all these initiatives / platforms are extremely interesting, extremely successful in their own right and so on. But we also have a situation where there are so many good initiatives, so many good programs and so on in Sweden. And this is actually sort of a challenge to make them a whole somehow, to improve the schools, to improve the situation for the young kids. Do you have any ideas of how we could work more together to help the children and how to help develop society? Someone? Karolina?
As I was mentioning, I mean, collaborations, both, I mean, within the same sector, but also to bring up, I mean, I think that Tekniksprånget was kind of a good also showing off. So, I mean, I think we could team up pretty much more of us in initiatives, and I know there's some dialogue already going on within this field. So, yeah, more teaming up.
I think teaming up is important, but I think that we as a country we need to work in the school system, but we also need to work in this non-formal science education, and we need as a country to put money there from the state, from the municipalities, etc. So we can't. I mean, we're all initiatives funded by private companies. We are like fighting for sponsorships, and it's really crazy that is the way that this goes forward, that there is nothing that is really big, because we need scale. We need to cooperate on we develop teaching materials, all of us. We develop administration tools, all of us. I mean, we should do it together. It should really be like you do in Denmark, but sort of just one big thing together and then supporting each other. That's what I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I was really inspired by learning how they do it in Denmark, and I think also that in Sweden we need to start doing and trying things out, and maybe not sort of trying to create the perfect program or something like that. So we need to build the platform together, but we need to start now.
Wise words. Okay, thank you so much, and please talk to them during the reception later on. So now I'd like to have four persons actually on stage at the same time. Tuula Teeri, the CEO of IVA. Ulrika Lindstrand, who is the chair of the Swedish Engineering Association. Linda, please come up again. And also Ghita, please come up. So, could you just say each just a few words? Well, what do you think? What are your impressions of the different talks? Well, you're not allowed to comment on your own, but otherwise, please, Ulrika, do you want to start?
I think it's amazing how much we already do, and how much how many initiatives that we do have going on. Because we want to solve an issue and we want to create a better world and introduce it to our young kids early on. And I'm so happy that Ghita could come today and tell us about Engineer the Future, because IDA is the sister organization of Sveriges ingenjörer. And I heard about this project when it first started, and I thought it was fantastic. Why don't we have this in Sweden? And as many of you said today earlier, what if we could create sort of an umbrella organization like Engineer the Future in Sweden, and learn from each other, try to collect all the good initiatives that's already here, make a best practice. We have amazing companies in Sweden. We have a lot of foundations that would love to, I hope, pitch in money to do this. And I really believe that we could turn the figures around and have more kids going into STEM, because it's so important. We are a small country that are so dependent on our innovations that we later on can export, and that is financing our welfare. So we can't afford not to bring everyone in that wants to in. And for those who are hesitant, try to fuel them and dare to go in, because there are so many that doesn't really dare. They want to, but they don't dare. So I think if we have an obligation, we who know how to do this, we have an obligation to start something like this in Sweden.
You think it's doable?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tuula, what do you say? What are your impressions?
Well, when I listen to these discussions, you know, I mean, I'm starting to think that. Thank you. I'm starting to think that, you know, I mean, or wondering actually, you know, if we're actually going to lose a whole generation of teachers, because it does sound like, you know, that it's the younger generation, it's the teachers who are teaching the teacher, you know, it's the children who are teaching the teachers and the parents, and I'm just wondering, you know, that have any of you actually any initiatives to interact with the teacher education? Because it seems almost like, you know, you talk about storytelling and you talk about practice-based learning. When we are training entrepreneurs, you know, it's the entrepreneurs who are teaching, it's not the teachers in the universities or schools who are teaching. So it looks like, you know, we almost like to need a new, not only Danish pedagogy, but we need a new pedagogy. We need a whole new approach, you know, of teaching these things to people. So does anybody work with teacher education?
I do.
Well done.
I do a lot of professional development with teachers around the world, and I'm going to be the contrarian in the room and say that Sweden doesn't need more consensus, you need action. And I think we have a tendency to believe that there is going to be a perfect beautiful plan we can put a bow on top of. But I think technology education, because it relates so much to our society, there's never going to be a moment when there's a one solution, one organization, one umbrella that's going to fix everything. I do believe that there needs to be different approaches and different initiatives. And that doesn't mean that you just wouldn't need to communicate with one another, and I think it's a difficult discussion a country needs to have of what kind of students you want to raise up for the next generation. So I'll give you a few examples. I work a lot with the New York Department of Education, and in New York they've stated that by 2020 every child in New York needs to have a meaningful computer science experience, which is a really interesting way of phrasing their educational goal. Then in Finland we changed our core curriculum for the primary school students in 2016, and it's stated that programming is learned through play, and in the older, the older kids in primary school need to learn to give commands without fear of making mistakes. So imagination and fearlessness were kind of the two things the curriculum states. And then, for instance, in UK, the computing curriculum they've had since 2014 states that in UK show the history and depth of thinking around technology UK as a country has. And these are all very separate ways of approaching technology education. And I think that is the consensus Sweden needs to come up with, is like what kind of society we want to build and what kind of students we want to come out of the end of the funnel, not necessarily to like bring everyone together.
Two comments. I think teachers are the key. So with all the lovely initiatives I heard, if you were to discuss, is there something you can you push the agenda on? I think that's where you could start. And just to be slightly different than Linda, just to get some energy going, our approach is very much the engineering design process. And luckily I hear you saying they don't need to do, you know, coding is not, or programming is not the solution to everything in the world, but there's a tendency in Denmark at the moment that they think just as long as we get coding into the school, that's going to solve it all. Engineering is about creativity, critical thinking, finding solutions. If we can get teachers to make that turnaround, but that's going to be so difficult. They're used to using recipes, and we're asking them to do, you know, be a coach, be a facilitator. You don't know what's going to happen. That's a dramatic change. So that was the one thing I'd say. Another thing is, I think parents and spare times activities, like you talked about, is so important to complement.
So let me open the floor as well. Questions, comments? Yes, we have one here. Please tell us who you are.
Okay, my name is Helena and I work with teacher education at KTH. And I would just like to say that we also like to be involved more, and I could see from one of your pictures here, one of our teachers coming from KTH. We need more teachers, right? This is one of the problems. I think that a lot of teachers that we train are good, but we need more of them. And we really like to work together with you. And I have a lot of teacher students who would love to come out and practice in your places. And I hope we can work together, as you say. That would be interesting.
Can I just comment
Please.
on that? Because the engineering didactic we made and we're working on in Denmark is done by teachers. The tricky thing here is that we got the teachers, university colleges engaged at the same time. And don't forget them, because that's really where you need the change to happen also. So the mix with experienced teachers, the university colleges, is a very good match.
And then the funding also. For New York, they have a private-public fund that trains these teachers, and they are very analytical in saying that, okay, if we want all children, 20,000 schools in New York State, to have a teacher, this is how we roll it back to these concrete goals of professional development every year. And in order to do that, we need a public-private fund to help.
Any other questions, comments?
Can I ask a question?
Tuula?
In just a second. Tuula.
I'm supposed to be answering, but I'm asking still. The one thing is that, when you make curriculum changes in Finland, for instance, you need the politicians to decide on it. How did you do that discussion? How was it going on?
It's the same as with the Danes, that the coding has such a wonderful momentum going on that pushing that through wasn't the hardest bit. I think the hardest thing is the teacher training and aligning the professional development now, in order for it to be too narrow and kind of.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And like you said, the problem, now we're talking about the lack of engineers, but we have a lack of teachers.
Yeah.
So honestly, if we don't get enough teachers, we can forget the rest.
Yeah.
Now let's see, we have a question there.
I have a question. My name is Linnea. I work at a company called Edvira, and we work a lot with the teachers and municipalities in Sweden with how we can get a better coding and programming education. The biggest problem we see is that so many teachers are afraid of this change and implementing it. So we have a hard time even coming to meetings with municipalities because they are so afraid of trying to convince the teachers to actually do something. Do you have any from Denmark or Finland, any good examples of how you overcome this teacher fear?
So in Finland, we follow the UK model where they have something called the master teacher model. So every school has a master teacher. The Computing at School, which is a grassroots initiative for teachers, gives a lot of resources and invests in these master teachers. And then their role is to kind of help the in-service teachers who feel frightened or afraid. So the goal is not to teach every teacher to become an engineering or computer science teacher. It is to find those people who can kind of spread the model. And then the Ministry of Education gave them quite generous grants also. And the hope is that they would be kind of the node stars or kind of the people who spread the change. But it's completely copycatted from the UK. So.
Well, in Denmark, I think it's tricky also, but the way we try to do it is working with the municipalities. In a lot of municipalities in Denmark, you have a STEM coordinator. And so what we try to do is, if we give them the big package in training, we try to make sure that on every level there's an agreement that they want to take these teachers through the training. And then the training is called action learning. So you go to one-day course, you go back, try it, come back. And honestly, by the end, you'll have teachers that feel very comfortable. And you'll also have teachers that are never, ever going to do it again. Hopefully there's a match. So the experienced teacher will actually take the less experienced. But we know it's not always like that.
Any comments? No? Okay, we're running very low on time here. Any very, very short, yes, very, very short question. Wait for the microphone.
Binette Seck is my name, and I would like to know, this is a question for all of you, but what do you think is the most effective way to feed fearlessness in girls? And whose responsibility do you think it is?
That's a big question.
Wow.
Okay, and we also ask for very short answers.
Yeah. I think I don't have an answer, but I think this is actually the essential question, because it's so funny with all these good results of all the girls, and yet they have this imposter syndrome. They are afraid of being discovered, that they after all? Where does it come from? What can we do about that? I mean, I think, I don't know if anybody can have an answer, but we should study it.
I think it's, I mean, many of you have talked about this, that we need to start very early on. But I think for the girls who are now trying to decide what they want to do, which field they want to study, I think that we that already are engineers, women engineers, we need to set an example, go out in the schools and tell them what we do, that it's possible. You don't have to be a genius. You are supposed to go there to learn how to be a genius. I try to do that where I live, go out in the schools and just tell what we do as engineers and how it is to study and actually I think I can see that it sparks interests. So we need more role models that are active, not just pictures and photos, but also that are active, that can tell and also tell the story about what made us go into this, what are the kind of problems we want to solve, why do we do what we do, and what do we do? Because there's so many ideas and different fields.
Maybe I'll echo that in the sense that I still have complete imposter syndrome on my computer science abilities because I never completed a master's or a grad study there. But what I am very confident about is that the intersection of early childhood, imagination, play and computer science is something where I can be really world class at. So maybe providing that perspective that computer science combined with horseback riding or computer science combined with something else can be that powerful area where you can totally feel like you're not an imposter in.
Well, 2 points on conscious bias. You know, what happens in preschool, one thing is we talk about STEM, but as long as we keep treating boys and girls different, and we do, it's a fact. So that's one thing. Another, then a comment to your role model idea. We actually have some research in Denmark showing that one thing is the role model. We show the big branding campaign, but role model close to you is the most important. So it's your mom, your dad, your uncle, your teacher. That's the most important. That's where you can mirror yourself. Last fun fact, OECD made a research last year showing that the more gender equality you have, the more women feel free to pick the education they want without addressing economics, power, etc. So since Sweden and Denmark, we are so equal and our economic status is very high, we pick and choose differently than if we were in Africa. Very interesting, actually.
Okay, thank you so much. So that will be the second to final word. My word will be the last one. And my words will be, I'm sorry, could you take it during the reception, or is it extremely short?
Yeah. I just can't be sitting here in silence. My name is Eva Hartel. I work at utbildningsavdelningen in Haninge Municipality and at KTH. I'm an education researcher. And Tuula said that to answer your question, in terms of fairness, I would say, despite all these wonderful initiatives, which I really, really encourage, I love these initiatives, but the key and to solve this in terms of fairness, I would say grundskolan. Compulsory education, grundsärskola, special education, everyone goes to school. And that's where we should put all our effort and to support teachers, to provide all our kids with STEM knowledge, skills and great interest in terms of fairness for girls and for boys and whatever, and also in special schools. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now you're all welcome down to the reception downstairs, and let's just join with me in an applause for all our speakers today. So.